Look down at your shirt right now. If you are a guy, your buttons are on the right side. If you are a girl, they are on the left. You have
I think the
probably done
proposal
this
is
a
ready.
million times and never
Excellent.
even
Let's
noticed
head
the
to the
difference.
office.
But why? Did the fashion industry just flip a coin? Nope. The answer is actually a 500-year-old glitch in the Matrix, involving Renaissance sword fights and wealthy Victorian maids. It is a massive historical habit that we just never bothered to fix. Let us unbutton the truth. Every single morning, billions of us wake up, grab our coffee, and blindly participate in a bizarre physical ritual without asking a single question. Whether you are throwing on a denim jacket for the subway, a chunky cardigan for the coffee shop, or a crisp dress shirt for the office, the rule is strictly enforced. Walk into any clothing store on the planet, and you will see it. The men's racks are meticulously wired for right-handed dominance, wrapping the left flap over the right. The women's racks are completely mirrored, wrapping the right flap over the left. It feels like an arbitrary design choice that someone just made up. But in the world of design, nothing is ever truly random. Form always follows function. So, what was the original function? To figure it out, we have to rewind the clock about 500 years and look at how men used to carry weapons. Back in the Renaissance, a gentleman's daily carry was not a smartphone, it was a razor-sharp rapier. Because most men were right-handed, swords were almost always worn on the left hip, so they could be drawn quickly across the body. Now, imagine you are locked in a sudden street duel. You reach across your chest to pull your sword, but the hilt gets perfectly snagged inside the flap of your heavy coat. Game over. To prevent this fatal wardrobe malfunction, tailors permanently designed men's clothing to button left over right, ensuring a smooth, uninterrupted weapon draw across the chest. Your basic office button-down is literally armored for close-quarters combat. But for women, the story takes a wildly different turn. Fast forward to the Victorian era. While working-class women wore simple slip-on garments or laced themselves up, wealthy aristocratic women wore incredibly complex layers. We are talking corsets, petticoats, bustles, and heavily structured dresses. You could not just throw that on by yourself. A lady of status was almost always dressed by a servant. And this is where the ergonomic flip happens. Try to button someone else's shirt while standing directly in front of them. If the buttons are on the right side of the wearer, it is incredibly awkward for the right-handed person doing the buttoning. To make the daily dressing ritual faster and easier for the maids, luxury tailors simply reverse the entire architecture of the garment. By placing the buttons on the wearer's left side, they lined up perfectly for the right hand of the servant facing them. It was the ultimate flex of aristocratic wealth. Women's clothing was not designed for the person wearing it. It was optimized for the person dressing them. As the centuries rolled by, we eventually stopped carrying swords to the grocery store, and personal dressing maids faded into history. But then the Industrial Revolution hit. Suddenly, clothing was not being hand-tailored one by one. It was being mass-produced in giant factories on a global scale. And factories need standardized templates. Instead of rethinking the design for modern utility, the early textile tycoons simply took the existing high-status blueprints, the leftover right combat jacket for men, and the reversed aristocrat gown for women, and locked them into the machines. The glitch became permanent. Today, that massive historical habit ripples across the entire globe, affecting nearly every single piece of structured clothing manufactured on Earth. Look at modern fast fashion, high-end runway lines, or basic outdoor gear. Giant automated looming machines and robotic sewing lines in factories from Bangladesh to Italy are meticulously recreating this 500-year-old social divide by the millions. Every single hour, the physical supply chains, the pattern-making software, and the global sizing charts are all fundamentally anchored to this invisible tradition. It is baked so deeply into our manufacturing infrastructure that changing it now would literally cost the global fashion industry millions of dollars in retooled machinery and pattern redesigns. So, they do not. We are literally flying helicopters on Mars and building artificial intelligence, but we are still wearing the ghosts of the 16th century. It is wild to think about how much of our everyday reality is just inherited muscle memory. We walk through our lives interacting with objects that were shaped by wars we never fought, and social classes that no longer exist. The physical world around us is basically a beautifully disguised museum of completely forgotten human problems. The fabric resting against your skin right now is not just a piece of cotton or polyester. It is a quiet, continuous thread stretching backward through time, connecting your rushed modern morning routine to the cobblestone streets of the Renaissance and the quiet dressing rooms of Victorian high society. So, tomorrow morning, when you are rushing to get ready for work or school, and your fingers are flying up your shirt, take a second to appreciate the fact that you are either suiting up for a sword fight or waiting for your invisible maid.